it leads into the conversation about being a parent. I would imagine that you believe in curation. You're right to be like, you know what, this content is not appropriate for my child where they currently are right now in their life. Is that correct?
I think that every parent has a right to, in fact, I love the word curate, curate literature for their own child. I'm actually a huge believer in children self-censoring for my children. I allow my kids free reign of my library, which includes both YA and middle grade, and my two oldest kids are 11 and 9. When my daughter was 10, she picked up the third book in a trilogy called the Chemical Garden trilogy by Lauren DeStefano. And I'm going to spoil a couple of things here, but it's
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
But she picks up the third book, and at the time I couldn't get her the first book because my baby was sleeping in my office. And I said, this is the third book. You're not going to really understand some of it. She's like, oh, that's okay, because she'll read anything. She's quite a voracious reader. And so she's reading along, and she says, Mom, how old is this Cecily girl? I said, Cecily is 14. Then how can she be pregnant? I said, well, this is a world where people die very young, and so they try to reproduce young so they can find a cure for whatever's killing everyone. Okay. She reads a few more pages. Mom, so this is a world where people can be married to more than one person? Yeah, but it's called polygamy or polyamory, and again, because they're trying to reproduce quickly, if you are married to more than one person, you're more likely to have a child, have more children. She reads a few more pages, says, Mom, what's a miscarriage? And so I'm explaining all these things to her, and, I did have a moment where I was like, but she's never picked up that book again. She's never asked for the first book of that series. She realized that was too much for her, and she read something else. And I'm a big believer that children will censor themselves as far as content goes.
That's really interesting right there because, there's a level of trust that you have that books are not going to harm your children in any way that a lot of people sort of are, I think they're hysterical about, it's going to take my young, precious little child's mind in a way. But I think you're right that kids will move away from content that they feel is inappropriate for them. But on the other hand, there's there is some content being published that as a parent, I still feel, at least for myself, that I need to be the roadblock for, right? And the gatekeeper might be a better way of putting it, because, got young kids, and it's not their time to get the terrible nightmares, to be spooked about things that, you want to it's still kind of like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and all those things, the Tooth Fairy. They live until they live, and then when they're dead, but there's no need for me as the parent to be the murderer of them.
And each individual child is different. I've got one child that I would hand a scary book, but not a book with language. And I've got another child I would hand a book with language, but not scary scenes. And again, even if you're a parent who has much more conservative taste than I do, that's totally your right for your children.
I so love that you said that, because I was just emailed yesterday about a parent from my new book, Cage Warrior, saying, this book is great. Kids want to read it, but I have parents, a teacher wrote me, who are concerned about the profanity. And for me as an author, there's sort of a veracity, a verisimilitude to the fact that this is how guys in the world of cage fighting talk. And if you take that away from the dialogue, you're going to have something that rings hollow. On the other hand, these are reluctant readers, and they are actually reading partly because there's a truth to the fiction. But it's a delicate balance, because you don't want to shove it down anybody's throat when a parent feels like, yo, I don't want that for my kid.
Hmm. Well, I'm just picturing these cage fighters going, "Stop that, you poop head!"
Yes, it's the
It looks so
gentle
scary
nature
and
of
written.
cage fighting that I'm trying to put on display right there.
On the other
April
hand,
Lynn,
if you're writing a historical, that kind of language doesn't fit either, So it's
that's true. That's true. And Shakespeare was bawdy
yeah,
in a lot of ways that, that people, are like, "Oh, it's entirely appropriate," when the fact is that if you understand what he's talking about in, in some of these witticisms, they're so scathing, but they're really virtually X-rated. And
yeah,
it's like, more Shakespeare in the schools, please. Nobody has a problem with that.
yeah, yeah. No, when I had a professor explain to me what a lot of the things that Juliet's nurse was saying to her meant, I was just like, oh,
Aprilynne, I would like to thank you so much for sort of coming on today's show. My name is Alan Sitomer. This is Aprilynne Pike. I encourage you to go check out her stuff, visit her website, follow her on Twitter. We are all about giving the love up for our guest today, Aprilynne Pike. Thank you guys very much for joining us today. Sayonara.